Dear participants, dear colleagues, it is a great pleasure for me to be, even if only virtually, with you today and welcome you at the Horizon Europe Mission Info Days 2023. My name is Orsolya Frizon-Somogyi. I am the Deputy Head of Unit Research and Innovation in Directorate General of Agriculture and Rural Development at the European Commission. And I will moderate this session dedicated to the mission A Soil Deal for Europe and its goals for 2023. And let me start by presenting the agenda of today's meeting and how the session will develop. The session will run for around 2.5 hours until 4:30. After my introductory words, I will give you an overview of the mission, focusing on its latest achievements and on its 23 calls for proposals. Then I will leave the floor to different speakers, my colleagues, who will present into details each of the 9 topics of the mission and the 2 joint topics that we have this year, 2023. They will present it by package. After every 3-4 topics, we will give you the floor and you will be able to raise questions. After the end of the presentation of the topics, the project nations will present its activities as they can be useful for other applicants. That brings me to the next slide. Let me remind you that you can use Slido in order to ask your questions. Also, we invite you to upvoting other questions which you consider most interesting. To use Slido, please follow the steps shown in the slide. You have different methods to access to Slido, but I am sure you are already very familiar with this too. To facilitate the moderation of the question and answer, when you ask a question, please label the question with the topic number. It will help us to give the floor to the right person in the intervention. While you follow the session, but also after the event, you may want to follow us and follow the work of the SOIL mission via our social media channels. On the screen, you can see the different options that you have. And now, to get more familiar with the Slido and to know you a bit better, I would like to launch a Slido poll. And this Slido will be, and we will have another one at the end of the session, is already related to the mission itself. And I will take the opportunity of this session to remind you that we have a World Soil Day, which is celebrated every year, the 5th of December. And what we would like to know from you is whether you have participated to any celebrations this year in 2022. So please use Slido, and with yes and no, you can reply to this question. You have 2 minutes to give your reply on this question. And if you haven't followed us in the previous links that we have provided, you can see how many events we have organized also ourselves at the Commission level, but many other events were organized in the member states. So we hope that you have been able to participate to at least one of them, or maybe already organized something at this occasion. There was a nice event also organized by the FAO at this occasion. So we have the impression that awareness raising worked, and many people now are following the issues of soil health. And I will come back also to that in my presentation and keynote speech just after the Slido poll has been closed. And I think soon the first reply will arrive, but I see that there might be some problem with the poll. I hope that you are able to connect and reply to the question. It works. For the moment, we have 50-50. Let's wait for some seconds. So not so much. I would have expected a little bit more. Yes, but positive replies are coming in. So I understand that, thank you very much. I understand that we have still room to improve. The World Soy Day is one of the events that helps gathering all the people committed behind soy health to speak about soy health issues. So please think about this year. At the end of the year, the 5th of December, we will organize our events, and please also do so. More events we have around Europe and across the world, more the soy health issue will be kept at high in the agenda. So the final result, as I see, is 46% of the participants to this session know about the World Soy Day, and I have done something, followed one of the activities of the World Soy Day. I think we can maybe close Slido now. So I see 44% what I have seen as last result of this first Slido consultation we have run. So now let me provide a very short first introductory speech about the mission itself. And just to give you a little recap of what is the mission and what we have achieved since the launching of the mission that started only 2 years ago officially, and how much we have achieved since. I hope you agree with us on that. So as I said, I'm sure that the part of the audience is already familiar with the concept of the EU missions. It is a process started more than 3 years ago. It was September 2019 when the Commission appointed the first mission board, that is a high-level group of experts in collaboration with the Mission Assembly, an extended group of experts, member states, stakeholders, and citizens. And together, the implementation plan has been drafted, the communication has been published, and we have started the launching of the mission and its implementation. I am sure we are familiar with the main challenges that the soil health is facing, and the objectives that we have defined for the implementation of the soil mission. We have 8 different objectives that you've seen on the screen. And of course, all those objectives have been defined in a policy context, mainly with the Green Deal strategy, but not only, and from international point of view, the UN Sustainable Development Goals also plays a very important role. I have already mentioned the mission board that helped our work when defining the implementation plan and the working methods of the mission. And now we have appointed a new mission board some months ago who has started its work and who help us in the implementation phase of the mission. Project results will further inform science, practices, and policies. And that brings me to one of the questions that we already received before the info sessions that we organized today, and how the mission is interconnected with other policies and other tools. And the question was related to the advices that can be provided to farmers to improve soil health. And that gives very much the spirit of the mission and the mission tool. The mission is a research and innovation instrument, but not only. It also ensures connections with other funding instruments in the EU, in the member states, and also private financing, and also related to the common agricultural policy and its ACIS instruments, which is about advising farmers. Now, maybe I would like to give you a very short update on the, and please let's go to the next slide, about the rollout of the mission. We are in an increasing speed. You can see on the slide in the first call for proposal in 2021, we had a budget of 67 million euros. In the work program 2022, we had already 95 million euros. And now in the work program that we are presenting today, we have 126 million euros. And there in the slide, you can see the different steps and the main deadlines of the different calls. When it comes to, and please go to the next slide. When it comes to the main instruments of the mission, soil mission, the living labs and the lighthouses, as you know, that is something that we have built up during the different work programs. And now in 2023, we are at the stage that we are happy to announce that we are now opening the first call for the living labs, and that we will discuss in details in the presentation later on. Next slide, please. When it comes to communication and engagement, it is a key element of the mission, and that also makes it different from other Horizon Europe instruments. How to raise awareness about soil health issues, how to raise activities and engagement from all sides of the society. And for that, you can see on the screen the different communication and engagement activities that we organized, to which we participated to. And one of them is this World Soil Day that I just mentioned and we just discussed when we launched the poll, which is the 5th December, where we have this year and already the previous year organized important events also to increase awareness about soil health issues and about the EU mission, A Soil Day for Europe. And the feedback that we have received has been very encouraging and has shown a genuine interest of people from all walks of life in soils and in the mission. We want to continue this dialogue with stakeholders and work closely with citizens to change the way society values soil. And now to be very concrete about the work program 2023. You see on the slide the different topics that will be presented later on by my colleagues. You see that we have 9 topics in work program 2023, and the total budget is, as I already said, 126 million euros. We have also one specific grant agreement and 2 joint calls with 2 other EU missions, because many of them are very much interrelated. And for this first time in this work program 2023, we are launching joint calls with other missions. We will also explain you how it works and which is the content of these 2 joint calls. As I said, we are also launching the first round of living labs and lighthouses. That is the key element of the soil mission. And just because we also received a question before the event about the participation, how applicant can participate from non-EU and non-associated countries. The same rule applies in the mission as for other Horizon Europe calls. It is open to applicants all over the world, with funding for low and middle income countries. And it is done if experts deem this necessary for the project implementation. So it depends on the different topics. And on that, you will also get some details when the topics will be presented by my colleagues. And the last point, which is also very important, is the opening of the call. As you know, the call has been opened yesterday, the 17th of January, and will close on the 20th September 2023. We set a larger time frame compared to previous years to ensure you the best chances to prepare quality proposals. And now I will give the floor to my colleague, the first one who will present the first topic of the soil mission for the work program 2023 will be Arvin Jones. Please remember that you can ask questions at any time using Slido. And the first topic is on discovering the subsoil, and Arvin Jones is joining us from the Joint Research Center. Arvin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Orsolia. Just share my screen. Okay. Just a second. So can you hear me correctly and see the screen presentation?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So just a very quick introduction to the first topic of this call. So the topic 0101 of the 2023 call is entitled Discovering the Subsoil. So it's a research and innovation action, and for this we have 12 million euros in total as an indicative budget, and so we are looking to fund at least two calls out of this, two projects out of this call. Now, the subsoil is has been traditionally under-investigated in soil sciences. We have a lot of data and knowledge about the processes that are active in the topsoil, but we tend to often neglect what's happening deeper within the soil profile. And so the expected outcomes of this call really is to improve both the data that we have and our knowledge on the condition of the subsoil across the EU and the dynamics of the processes that are operating within it, and to make these data then available to the broader research community, but also to those who are developing policies for healthy soils, so that there's a consideration of the subsoil. The other outcome is that we want then to be able to address those areas where we find unhealthy subsoil. So we should be able to identify and remediate degradational pressures that are operating within the subsoil. So we want to be able to show how we can accelerate and support the management practices that can achieve these goals. And an important element also is in the relation to the ecosystem services that the subsoils are providing. Very often these are not considered, or they're poorly considered. And in terms of issues specifically like mitigation and adaptation of climate change, we want to be able to see how the subsoil is affecting processes like carbon sequestration and maybe long-term water storage, in particular in terms of extreme weather conditions such as droughts and floods. So, as I said in summary, the main scope is to understand better the chemical, physical, and biological processes that are operating in the subsoils, to identify the main pressures that are acting on the subsoil that impair soil functions and ecosystem services. In the past, there's been a lot of consideration on maybe on subsoil compaction, but we don't know very much in terms of subsoil pollution, for example, and the impact that may have on the water flow, the flow through the soil to groundwater, and the organisms that are living within the subsoil. So the call should look to identify indicators to assess changes in soil functioning, and then to identify also, as I said, the capacity of subsoils to carry out a range of ecosystem services. The call should also look at management practices to reflect how land use and management are affecting these processes in the subsoils. And a very important policy aspect is to be able to assess the impacts of policies on land use change and how they affect the subsoil. So we're looking for tools and methods to understand better the risks that subsoils could be placed under. To support this, then we need data. So the call should look at methods to improve data collection and to then establish procedures to monitor the chemical, physical, and biological characteristics of the subsoil. The thing to bear in mind for this call is that the subsoil is usually found below the topsoil, which can be the first 10 to 30 centimeters of the soil. It varies according to the type of soil and its location within the landscape. And another element is that the outcomes of this call should engage with the EU's Soil Observatory, which is based at the GRC here in Ispra in Italy. So we look forward to having collaboration with the winning consortia for this call. Okay. In that case, I'll move on to the second call. So the 2023-0102. And this is addressing soil pollution processes, modeling and inclusion in advanced digital decision support tools. Again, this is a research and innovation action with also an indicative budget of around 14 million euro in total. So we're looking for 2 projects in the order of 7 million euro per project. And indeed, the soil pollution is actually a very important objective of the Green Deal, and a number of the strategies that were launched under the Green Deal. So in particular, the soil strategy, but also in terms of the sustainable food production and the zero pollution action plan that aims for a toxic-free environment by 2050. So here we have real, let's say, policy targets. And the scope behind this call is that there are several soil pollution models that are being used by researchers out there, but there's a tremendous lack of integration between them. Very often we see that models exist to describe the fate and transport of individual pollutant types, but there's no consideration very often for the mixtures where we have different types of pollutants. Also, we don't have very good understanding of emerging pollutants and how they move and transform themselves in the environment. And very often soil pollution modeling is done in isolation. Perhaps there's some consideration of flows to surface water bodies, but very often there's not so much consideration of deposition of pollutants from the atmosphere onto the soil, and also in terms of the applications of things like wastewater onto soil, so bringing pollutants back through irrigation and so on. So indeed, the outcomes of this call is to have a much stronger understanding of the integration of different pollution processes over time and in a spatial dimension as well. We would like to be able to develop scenario analysis that we can show the impact of different policy areas, the different policy instruments, climate change, changes in land management and land use practices, and to be able to benefit also from diverse data flows to support the modeling. So very often we have some traditional sort of field survey data being used to populate these models, but we want to bring in maybe the broader digital data streams that are coming through the Copernicus services, land services, also maybe to capture data coming from precision agriculture, in-ground sensors, and also to relate them to other modeling environments as well. So if we think about the digital earth concept, the digital twin, to bring in maybe the impact of climate change on general vegetation processes or on atmospheric dynamics, and to see what are the impacts then on soil pollution. So again, as I said, the main scope is to both improve existing models so that they capture more accurately the reality that we're dealing with, to integrate them, to bring all these different processes and interests together, and to understand also the implications not just on the physical and chemical properties of the pollutants, but also their impacts on the biology as well, so on the biodiversity of soil. And as I said too, the project would look at developing use cases that actually capture local soil management practices and to understand their impact on the pollution in terms of obviously their fate and over time and potential transfer, and also the contact with crop systems as well in terms of health aspects. So point to bear in mind for this call is that the data and tools should be used to help advance the Destination Earth initiative, which I mentioned, which is all on the digital twin. And again, we would like to stress the collaboration with the EU Soil Observatory in terms of data sharing and the feeding of more, let's say, robust scenario analysis into policy reporting, such as that as the Green Soil Outlook report of the Zero Pollution Action Plan. Okay, I'll stop there. Happy to have any questions later on.
Thank you very much, Arvin. And before giving the floor for question and answer, let's handle the third topic, which will be introduced by Giuseppe Pellegrino. He's joining us from RTD, and who will present the details of the topic on-site digital technologies to monitor nutrients and chemical or biological stressors in soil and plants with reference for food safety and nutrition. Giuseppe, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Orsolia. Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, dear future applicants. Yes, the topic on-site digital technologies to monitor nutrients and chemical or biological stressors in soil and also in plants with a relevance for food safety and nutrition is an innovation action with a budget of 12 million and it is 6 million per project. So if we go to the next slides, I will start in presenting the policy context of this topic, which is really aligned with the green transition and also the digital transition. So the European Green Deal with a focus of the farm to fork, the Europe Fit for Digital Age, but also the EU Food 2030 initiatives and the bioeconomy strategy. The expected outcome of this call is to increase the availability of on-site digital tools, namely the light-based technologies, remote sensing, artificial intelligence, to monitor nutrients, micronutrients, but also pollutants, chemical and biological stressors, and in soils, but also in food in the various stages of the food production. The outcome is also to improve the capacities for food safeties and the mitigation that comes with it. If we go to the next slide, I will provide you more insight on the scope. Indeed, is to advance the existing technology or develop a new one to monitor the nutrients, the pollutants, and these technologies may help the appropriate interventions in the various food production stage, with, for example, the aim to remove excess nutrients and micronutrients. Another scope that the project has is to use this data to build a model, so modeling for calibration and prediction of nutrients and micronutrients in soils. Another scope is to advance the technologies or develop new ones for the detections of soil parameters with the relevance for food safety and nutrition. Finally, it's important to identify challenges and scale up existing digital technologies related to the soil-food nexus. The points to bear in mind for this call is that the use of Copernicus or Galileo is important if the projects will use a satellite-based Earth observation. Finally, it is important also that there is a strong contribution and collaboration with the EU Soil Observatory of the European Commission Joint Research Centers. Thank you. I'm happy to have a question if there are any later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Arvin and to Giuseppe. And now the floor is yours. In case you would like to have questions on those three topics, you can raise them and colleagues will provide reply. I ask my colleagues sharing if we have already received any questions. We wait for some minutes so you are able to introduce your questions or to vote on the questions that has been raised by others. So now the questions are coming in. I will take the second one first because that is related to the topics that has just been presented. Which entities are eligible to be coordinator for, should consortia preparing proposal for the first two topics get in contact with the GRC for assessing the collaboration? Please, Arvin, if you would like to take this question.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. And so, in Horizon Europe, the mechanism by which the GRC can engage with the projects under the framework program has changed a little bit. Now, if it's indicated in the call, it's possible for the GRC to be part of the grant agreement as a non-funded beneficiary. So that basically we engage in the consortium under our own funds. We don't receive any additional funds from the Horizon Europe program. Neither do we then eat into the budget of the call. However, the big change is that therefore we do not contribute at all to the development of the proposal from the consortium. You can approach the GRC to ask for clarification or let's say further explanation on the call, but after that, unfortunately, for us, we are not able to contribute then to any further development of the proposal. So yes, to contact us, but no to the development of the application. I hope that's clear.
Thank you very much, Arvind. You can see on the screen there is another question raised on topic 2. If you could take also this one.
Yeah. So the question is, should proposals concentrate on shocks such as the Ukraine war in the modeling? I don't think the proposal should be exclusively on such events, but one could consider that the consideration of industrial accidents, for example, or indeed if there are sudden introductions of pollutants such as military ordnance or pollution as a result of conflict, they indeed are important elements to be considered. Let's say the overall scope of the call is to derive a much more holistic understanding of soil pollution. So looking at fluxes and emissions in other media and how they interact with soil. But indeed, you know, the understanding the consequences of accidents and conflict into soil pollution are also important considerations.
Thank you very much, Arvind. There is also a third question on the screen, but as it is not related to the topics, I will leave it out. And in case you would like to raise it, you can also send it in written after the event. Do we have any other question directly on those 3 topics?
There's an additional question on topic 1, Rosalia.
Yes, I see it now.
Yeah. Okay.
If you can take this, yes, I see it now.
There's a question on the subsoil call, and it says, how much is modelling included here, future land use, and how much are urban soils important? So, as you hopefully saw in the description of the call, there should be some element of modelling because we want to be able to show what are the consequences of drivers affecting subsoil condition over time, but also in relation to new policy instruments. So indeed, future land use or future climate change are 2 areas that should be considered. In relation to urban soils, as you know that we now have a new EU soil strategy for 2030, where it considers the vision to have healthy soils across the EU by 2050, and that also includes urban soils as well. So indeed, subsoils in an urban context should also be considered.
Thank you very much, Arvind. You have seen that we have another question on topic 1. If you can also take this one.
Yeah. Sorry that my screen's refreshing. Indeed. So the question is the 01 call a topic for a company with biochar solution for regenerative agriculture? I think how soils are used for a range of applications and inputs should be considered. I think generally biochar tends not to be introduced into the subsoil, but if it can be shown, for example, that if there's a solution to subsoil compaction, maybe this is an area that could be investigated. So I think all options relating to the how management practices affect the subsoil can be considered. .
Thank you very much. Maybe I would like to add to Arvin's reply that there is an official inquiry desk in the funding and tenders portal, through which question on scope can be also introduced. So it's good for you to know. I do not see any additional questions. Yes, there is another one on topic 2. If you can see it.
Yeah. So the question is there any emphasis on particular contaminants, PFAS, PCBs, lindane, etc.? So the answer is no, not on a particular contaminant, but we want to have a more, as I said, holistic approach to pollution modeling. So indeed, they should address all or as many soil pollutants as possible. So in particular, PCBs, PFAS, pesticides, metals, plastics, all these, let's say, radioactivity, all these major pollution classes should be considered.
Thank you very much, Arvin. Let's wait some seconds. Yes. Another question on the first topic. Are there any specific on the EU partners other than the ones mentioned in the introduction?
Non-EU partners. I think is this maybe one for you in terms of who is eligible for the call?
I think the question is whether there is any specific rules, because what we have presented at the beginning is the general rules for the mission, the same as for Horizon Europe. The question is whether in this specific case, for topic 1, whether there is any specific rules related to non-EU partners.
No, I'm not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay. So no specific rules in the case of this topic.
If I understand the question correctly, yes.
And now question for all 3 topics. Topics 1 to 3 include communication packages, stakeholder engagement, or are they strictly scientific? Maybe first Arvin?
Yeah.
After Giuseppe, if you want to come in.
So the first 2 have a very strong science component, obviously because we are looking to enhance the scientific knowledge base of the subsoils and also to improve our capacity to better understand soil pollution. However, in both calls, I think there's an expectation to be able to highlight the key outcomes that come out of both of these calls, and also in particular for the pollution modeling. Maybe there are some novel outcomes that come from let's say a more improved understanding of processes over time and in a geographical sense. So I think both the first 2 should also have strong dissemination and engagement elements to them.
Thank you, Arvin. Would you have something to add, Giuseppe?
Also, for my topics, I think there is a scientific component, but on top of that, I think that the stakeholder engagement, the communication packages are very welcomed. Also, the use of the Horizon Europe platform, if there are any result along the deployment of the projects, and also the linkages with the living labs are welcome. Thank you.
Maybe it's good if I also recall the general rules. All Horizon Europe projects have an obligation to set up a website and communicate on their activities. So any of the topics that we will present today. And in addition, one of the evaluation criteria is about impact. That means that it includes reaching out to potential users of the results. But that is a general rule that concerns all the topics. And maybe just to recall, so in case you would have additional question, you can always ask them in return through the research inquiry service. But I see that we have an additional question on topic 2. Arvin, please.
Yeah. So the question is, what would be the recommended number of case studies related to soil types, land use, and climate region within the soil pollution call? I think at this stage we wouldn't necessarily want to put a number. More important, I think, to be able to demonstrate what's the rationale behind the case study, and so if one needs several case studies to demonstrate the impact on different combinations of pollutant types, climatic zones, and land uses. I think that we would leave that to the imagination of the people writing the call.
Thank you very much, Arvin. And if you don't mind, it would be good to move to the next package of topics that we will present to you, because we have still many on the table and the time is running. So the next on my list is Leonard Meyer, who will speak about the innovations to prevent and combat the desertification topic. Leo, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. So the first of the two topics that I will present now is about an issue that is quite central in the soil mission, namely desertification, but on which not all that much has happened in the first 2 years of mission implementation. It's an innovation action, and I hope it will become clearer why when we look more closely at the topic. Here we have 40 million euros for what we expect to be 2 complementary projects. In terms of the context, as you see here, and as I mentioned before, this is specifically identified the halting of desertification as one of the specific objectives for the soil mission. And of course, there's a host of more general policy initiatives at EU level that could also be cited here, but we kept it as specific as possible. And just wanted to highlight also that there is some relevant work already done at the Science Policy Interface on which we would like the projects to build from JRC, the Atlas of Desertification, and also the special report from the IPCC. So I mentioned that this is an innovation action, which means that the emphasis is not so much on basic research, where we basically we would rather expect the projects to refine and synthesize the knowledge that is there, and to make it more widely available, but then really to focus on the demonstration of solutions, both for preventing desertification and for restoration of land that has already been affected by this issue. This should lead to enhanced access to relevant solutions, and also to information on the conditions under which different solutions can be applied in any particular context. Ultimately, we would like to see more areas and also larger areas to come under sustainable management of soil and water, and the dryland soils to become more resilient as an end result. Looking then more closely at the scope, as I already said, and this follows quite closely from the expected outcomes, the project should both where relevant gather new evidence and synthesize the existing one. Where relevant, this could also be done through modeling, and it should always be done with a view to supporting the alternative land management actions that help against desertification. The project should also then demonstrate the effectiveness of relevant measures and do that as a increasingly large and for different types of land uses or land use changes. There's one particular element of the scope focusing on agriculture in particular, but it's important to notice that this is not a precondition. Other consideration of other just as welcome. So this would apply if a project applicant decides to focus on agriculture. Yeah, this being an innovation action, we put an emphasis on broad involvement of relevant participants and actors. This is also, by the way, reflected in the topic being flagged as multi-actor. And we would like to see some policy recommendations to come out of it as well at the end. Apart from the multi-actor approach, other things to keep in mind here are in terms of the technology readiness level. It's relatively broadly defined, but there is a minimum level that should be achieved. And in the topic, you also see identification of two particular projects or coming projects that we would like the applicants to engage with. PRIMA, for those who might not be aware, is a partnership on research and innovation in the Mediterranean area. And then there's also relevant LIFE project. If you're interested in this, by the way, PRIMA has their own info day tomorrow where relevant projects or topics rather will also be presented. And yeah, the Mediterranean, of course, not being just a European sea basin, international cooperation is also specifically highlighted here. We can then move on to the next topic, I think. Thank you. So this does not have much in common with the previous one, except that it's also an innovation action. Here we have a slightly smaller budget of 30 million euros, but also the idea of funding two projects eventually. It's focusing on horticulture as a sector which doesn't get all that much attention in agricultural research and innovation, but which is an important user of certain growing media that can be problematic. So what we would like to see happening here, or rather to locate it in the context first, we have in the implementation plan, next slide please, we have two specific objectives that are relevant, or rather three even, in terms of soil organic carbon, pollution, and also soil structure. And of course, this again relates to a number of the well-known Green Deal instruments. In the title of the topic, you have the reference to growing media, and of course, this mainly concerns peat as a substance that is used widely because of its favorable properties as a soil enhancer or directly to grow plants in. But of course, it's also an important carbon sink. So we would like to see sustainable alternatives to peat to become more widely available and used. But it's not only about peat, it's also about other aspects of horticultural production systems that have an impact or can have an impact on soil, and where we would like the projects to identify those where novel products and production processes can be advanced. Again, as in the previous topic here, we also have a component for the projects to look at policy measures that can support such innovation. Then more specifically regarding the scope, again, this follows, we hope, quite naturally from the expected outcomes. We want more sustainable practices to be identified, developed, and promoted. And again, with a focus on materials that can be used as alternatives to peat. There should also be an element of demonstrating the not just the technical feasibility, but also the economic viability of those alternatives, and to generate additional data that can help in evaluating the performance of different alternatives. Beyond growing media, then again, we provide some suggestions here for other things that could be looked at in terms of increasing the sustainability of horticultural production. And in terms of policy making, I think quite obviously it's about finding out what might stand in the way of those improved methods to be used more widely, and what could be done about that. Here, as always, we also, or not always maybe, but in many projects, we have a specific component also on awareness raising, dissemination, and training, which we see as important enablers for such changes in the sector. Again, multi-actor flagged, technology readiness level, medium to high, and this is also specifically flagged as requiring the involvement of social sciences and humanities. And we highlight the need to cooperate closely with the European Soil Observatory, to which Arwin also already referred in his presentation. So that's it from my side for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leonard. Before opening the floor for the questions, we still have two other topics to be presented. The next one by my colleague, Annette Schnegens, who is working with us in DG Agri and who will speak about soils in spatial planning.
Okay, go ahead. Good afternoon. So the topic 06, which is soils and spatial planning, is not just to us, I think, quite a novel topic. It was identified as a major gap in soil sciences overall. So I hope that you find, consortia, you find partners that are willing to apply to this topic. We will fund only one project at a range of about 7 million euro, and it is a research and innovation action. In the next slide, you will see a bit of the background. In fact, the EU has committed under the UN Convention to combat desertification to land degradation neutrality by 2030. So this is really not so much to go, a couple of years only. And one of the principles of this land degradation neutrality to achieve this is to apply an integrated land use planning in all land use decisions, so to say. So you see that land use planning is one of the tools to move towards land degradation neutrality and no net land take. In the same vein, the EU soil strategy asks member states to identify targets by 2030 to reduce net land take, and has the wide objective to have no land take at all by 2050. In the upcoming soil health law, there will be a clear definition of what we mean under no on a land take or no net land take, because this is also, there's a bit of nuances what is defined, how this is calculated. So basically, we have EU commitments, international commitments, and also strategies like the long-term vision for rural areas are really based on a balanced development of the EU territory, for example, to sustain ecosystems in urban or rural areas. So this bit of the background. And we expect from this initial project, I would say, on spatial planning, that after the course of the project and the deliverable of results and outcomes, spatial planners widely in the EU have a better view and recognize more systematically the value of soils, of the functions in spatial planning. To this end, they should be, of course, be equipped with sufficient data, information, and planning tools. And ideally, having these data and tools at hand, they will give priority to nature-based solutions to support soil functions through land use planning processes. Then there's a specific outcome expected, and this concerns I would say, the reuse of land, for which also land use planning is crucial. And this would be that approaches for rezoning, restoration, desealing are more widely applied when reusing land in urban areas, typically. To the scope on the next slide. The topic really is based on the range of tools and methods. So starting, from classical research, but then going into more empiric review of case studies and skills development. So more specifically, we expect applicants and proposals to look systematically at how soils, the function ecosystem services are reflected in the various levels of spatial planning in the EU and associated countries. So there would be a bit of a mapping of what are we doing currently in the EU, in associated countries, and can we even draw on good examples to highlight the various tools that are in place, and it could be even further developed. In that context, you will probably also automatically be asked to look into trade-offs. So if in spatial planning some soil functions are really not sufficiently reflected, this may be also because of trade-offs between the provision of various services. So that we would like to highlight to understand the bottlenecks to more soil-friendly spatial planning. In that context also, I just said already, we would like to get a nice view of good practices, either in the EU, but maybe also outside, in urban and rural areas, so that we can better assess what is possible and what is the impact where these practices are used. Can we see good effects? Then proposals are also asked to develop strategies to progress towards zero net land take by 2050. I was just mentioning that the soil strategy even asks member states to come up with such strategies by 2030. So this project could be a very, very powerful enabler for member states to meet this demand from the strategy. They should also provide practical recommendations and identify bottlenecks on how to better integrate soils into existing practices. So where we see here something is done but not sufficiently, how could that be improved? This will require certainly very active interactions, proactive interactions with spatial planning authorities. And finally, I was mentioning, this is a topic that promotes the European Agenda of Skills this year in 23, and it's absolutely necessary to improve the training in skill bases of future and also current urban planners and decision makers for land management users. Now, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. As you can imagine, the project may provide quite interesting data on land management, and these kind of data, again, may be super interesting for the user, for the Joint Research Center. So after the grant negotiation, or during grant negotiation, the selected project will liaise closely with the GRC and see how to develop this kind of interaction. Then proposals should also seek to build synergies between the work on land management and the management of other resources, in particular water. There is, I wouldn't say overlap, but there's quite an integration already, by which you have tools already to protect and restore water bodies, for example, or use water in much more efficient ways. And these tools could nicely interact with land use planning mechanisms. So to explore these synergies. And finally, I was saying already as well that we would like to draw good examples from Europe, associated countries, but if there are also some good examples and practices from third countries, these are also very much welcome. I think I will leave it there and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annette. And without losing time, I give the floor for the next speaker, Ariana Pasha from DG Agri, who will present you the next topic. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Orsholia. So the topic number 7 is called Back to Work, Bringing Communities and Citizens Closer to Soil. It is a coordination and support action with a total budget of 6 million, and we expect to fund one project. If we can go to the next slide. So this topic is expected to contribute to the emissions of Year for Europe, of course, in particular to its objective number 8, which is increased soil literacy across society. It is supposed to contribute to the education for climate coalition and to the long-term vision for EU rural areas, as the mission is one of the flagship initiatives of the vision. The expected outcomes under this topic are the following. We expect an increased societal awareness on the importance of soil and the challenges it faces, but we also expect an increased awareness on the impact of individual decisions on soil. And this should be demonstrated through increased engagement in the protection and restoration of soil health. We expect that more opportunities are available for engaging in creative ways in the protection and restoration of soil. We expect that cultural and creative industries, artists, civil society organizations are mobilized to increase soil literacy in society and work together with different soil experts and with citizens more in general. We also expect an increased capacity of public and private institutions at different levels to engage with the wide public in the promotion of sustainable soil management. If we can go to the next slide, we'll see a bit more what is under the scope of this topic. The topic test is quite detailed and dense in terms of the activities that we are asking to the project to implement. So instead of going into all the details, I prefer to explain what is the logic behind. We would like that the winning project will establish a network, and this network is expected to grow, to expand during the lifespan of the project. How? Through the use of financial support to third parties. So the initial consortium will have a kind of coordinating role of all the activities that will be then developed through other projects and initiatives financed through the financial support to third parties. So the network has indeed some key activities to coordinate, monitor, and evaluate the action taken through the project and initiative, but they also have the network as also other type of relevant activities, such as organizing regular festivals. We are asking to organize at least 2 festivals open to the public during the life of the project. And proposals should also show how this festival can be sustainable and be still kept beyond the life of the project itself. Then the project and initiative financed through the financial support to third parties should run innovative communication campaign to raise awareness on the importance of soil, organize and promote artistic soil-related activities and events, and engage citizens and in the protection and preservation of soil. And these projects should do it through innovative and participatory methodologies. So we expect here that the network that is established includes cultural and creative industry, artists, civil society organization, and so on. And this type of organization should work together with soil expert institutions or universities that are an expertise in this domain. If we can go to the next slide. It is important to keep in mind for this topic that it is open to international organizations, which have their headquarters in a member state or in an associated country. Exceptionally, this coordination and support action is open to legal entities established in non-associated countries, so beyond member states and associated countries. It must implement the multi-actor approach, and it is a topic flat for the expertise of social sciences and humanities. As I said, proposal should use the financial support to third parties in the forms of grants, which can be of 150,000 euro each as a maximum, and the total amount should not exceed the 40% of the total EU funding foreseen for this topic. The proposal should create synergies with Humus, which is another project funded under the mission. It was coming from a 2021 call. And this project will engage with municipality and regions, and should also look for synergy with the project that will come out from the call called Foster Soil Education across society. At the moment, proposals are under evaluation. Proposals are also encouraged to look for synergy with projects funded under the Creative Europe program. And with this, I end my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ariana. And now the floor is yours for any question and answers. We are receiving many questions and we are running a little bit out of time. So we will take as much as we can the questions, and those that we could not, for which we could not reply today, you will be replied later on. So no problem. If the question is not answered today, it will be answered later on. So maybe start with the first question related to question 4. It is for Leo. What kind of activities are expected to be executed together with other funded PRIMA and LIFE projects? Could you please take this one, Leona?
Yes, thank you. The topic text is not prescriptive in this regard, and I think there is also a distinction to be made between LIFE and PRIMA in this respect, in the sense that we talk about one specific LIFE project that is ongoing, whereas in the case of PRIMA, there are also additional projects coming online. So it depends. There are no very specific expectations in this regard. It just needs to make sense, as always.
Thank you very much, Leo. The 2 other questions are also for the topics that you have covered. On topic 5, is the focus of this call on only growth media? Should the proposal also focus on horticulture production under field conditions?
Yeah, so as I tried to say, this is one major focus that we have about peat as a growing medium, but it's not the only one. The description is a bit more open-ended with regard to other issues. So there is room also for inventiveness and imagination for applicants to identify other issues they propose to tackle. We do think, I think we do say quite specifically in the text that, yeah, practices should cover both protected and open field systems. So it's not a specific focus, but it should be part of the proposal, the field conditions.
Thank you very much, Leo. We have still one question on topic 5 on dissemination training. Does this include pilot 4 curriculum development for schools? Are there connections with education and pedagogics field?
Interesting question. Yes, we do mention vocational training specifically in the topic text. So that's a type of school if you want. But I don't think we would be excluding other types of training and education. I don't see why this could not be part of a proposal also. Yeah, it should be balanced, of course, as part of the package, but it's not excluded.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? For the moment, I do not see on my screen. I do not see other questions. In that case, let's move on. And now we are coming to the main tool of the mission, which are the Living Labs support. As I said in my introductory speech, that will be the first time in the Work Program 23 that will open calls for Living Labs. And my colleagues, Paola Eulalia, who will present the 2 Living Lab calls, and after you will be able to raise questions. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So so my first presentation is on this topic of co-creating solutions for soil health in Living Labs. It is a research and innovation action, and the indicative budget is the total of 36 million euros for 12 million euros per project. So concerning the policy context of the topic, it supports as many others the EU Green Deal and several of its strategies. It supports, of course, the soil emission goal of setting 100 Living Labs to lead the transition towards healthy soils by 2030, and importantly, the specific objectives of the soil mission, which were already announced by Orsolia in the introduction, except number 2. So except the mission objective of conserving and increasing organic carbon stocks. And this is because we have a specific call for that. And the topic also supports international, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. On the outcomes, so we expect out of the project that Living Labs are established, so fully operational as places to co-create, to test, to evaluate solutions for soil health. We expect increased capacities for participatory, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary research and innovation approaches. We also expect that practice-oriented knowledge and tools are more easily available and contribute to an enhanced uptake of solutions. We would like to see strengthened collaborations between actors and also increased considerations for these effective solutions for soil health where the Living Labs are operating. And last but not least, very importantly, we expect the policymakers to be more aware of the needs in regards to soil health so that they can use this to design better policies. And concerning what we asked to applicants in the scope of the topic, if we can change this, thank you. So it is expected that applicants will set up per project between 4 to 5 living labs. And let's say this is a minimum that we give like an indicative number, but it can be more depending on the land use, of course, and depending on the purpose of the project. So the issue that it will address. And also please note that it is expected, as explained in the topic text, that each living lab has to work on several sites. This is, and these several sites can represent the same or different land use types. So the 4 to 5 living labs working on this project have to share, of course, a common problem, so a thematically related soil health challenge. So the connection between these living labs have to be very clear in order for them to work together, and this has to be well described, the rationale for their cooperation in the application. The applicants have to write a very clear, detailed work plan showing how they will cooperate, how the activities will be undertaken, ensuring that there is really a co-design and co-development, which is the basis of a living lab approach. Also within this working plan, they should clearly explain how they are contributing to the mission-specific objectives that has been chosen for the specific project. Importantly also that applicants establish a baseline for the selected soil health challenge that they will address, and that in each living lab. In order to do then the monitoring of the progress towards the objectives of the living lab and towards the objective of the project as a whole. So linked to this, what we're asking is that applicants should really monitor and carry out an assessment of the effects of their solution on soil health and on the related ecosystem services. This should include also demonstration of the viability of the proposed solutions. So the proposed strategies should ensure long-term sustainability of the living labs beyond the funding time of Horizon Europe. Last but not least, we're asking applicants to document everything, so the solutions that are developed in a very easy way so that this can be transferred, so to really facilitate the uptake by land managers and other actors. So to keep in mind, there are some things that I would like to highlight, but again, the topic text in the work program is more detailed. So the project should, of course, apply the multi-actor approach. And there is an option that we give for beneficiaries that they can provide financial support to third parties. And here we set up a maximum of 200,000 euros to each of the third parties. We would like the projects to capitalize on ongoing projects, also on the future living lab support structure that will be set up like a SGA, specific grant agreement. We would like them to also take the advantage and interact with the already set operational groups. So the key local stakeholders in living lab activities, which can really help on the dissemination of solutions. It is also expected that the living labs work closely with the EU Soil Observatory, and if applicants work on agricultural living labs, these should benefit both conventional and organic farming. So this is everything for, I think I have to say, for this topic.
Thank you very much. Yeah, go on to the next one. Yes.
Indeed, I can directly link to the next topic as it is very similar. So topic 0109 has is on carbon farming in living labs. So it's basically has the same requirements than the previous topic, but with a specific scope of carbon farming. So here the living labs will not be created in a bottom-up approach, but they really need to work on this specific soil mission goal, which is conserving and increasing soil organic carbon stocks. For this topic, which is also a research and innovation action, we have only one project that will be hopefully funded for 12 million euros. So the political context, the policy context, sorry, it's very similar to the previous one. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So it's basically the EU Green Deal ambitions and targets, and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but more specifically, we would like this topic to support the Commission's communication on sustainable carbon cycle and the recently adopted regulatory proposal on the certification of carbon removals. And then going to the specific soil emission objectives, as I said before, we would the topic has to support number 2, which is the one on conserving and increasing soil organic carbon stocks. So project results are expected to contribute to the following outcomes that you see on the screen. Basically, increased carbon sequestration and retention of carbon in soils, as well as living biomass and dead organic matter with all the environmental co-benefits should be enhanced. We would like also to see increased capacities for participatory, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary research, allowing for effective cooperation between sectors, so between science, between the practice, and between also the policy. And this is specifically to tackle carbon farming challenges. We would like to also, we expect also practice-oriented knowledge and tools are more easily available. And this specifically also to contribute to the uptake of carbon farming techniques, strengthen collaborations between actors, as well as increased consideration of the solutions for carbon farming, and as I said before, also the policymakers to be more aware of the problems related to carbon farming to be able to implement better policies on that. And linked to these outcomes, we can see in next slide the scope of the project, which is very similar to the previous one. So we expect the project to set up a group, a cluster of living labs containing minimum 4 to 5, as we say, to work together, in this case, on carbon farming issues. This can be the sorry, the living labs, as highlighted in the previous topic, needs to contain or need to be made up of several sites, and this can be in different land uses types. The proposal should describe very clearly the rationale for the cooperation between these living labs. In this case, it's easier because it's one specific objective that they will tackle, and how they will work together to contribute to this objective. They have to detail, again, in the work plan, which activities they will undertake, ensuring that there is a co-design, co-creation, co-development, and how they will adapt the solutions to carbon farming challenges locally. It is expected that projects will carry out, again, participatory approach, considering drivers and pressures, and also taking into consideration the issues on the scaling up and the transferability of the solutions that they'll find for carbon farming in the specific sites. Very importantly, applicants are requested to establish also a baseline on carbon farming to allow for an accurate assessment of the changes on soil, and also to allow for a clear monitoring of the progress towards the objective of increasing or retaining the carbon on soils. So yes, the scope of monitoring and carrying out an assessment of the innovative practices on carbon farming, and And this also considering in this case the effects of the ongoing climate changes on carbon sequestration potential and also the dynamics. So more specifically on this topic, the funded projects should make use of the relevant methodologies for quantification of carbon removals. And they should address the durability, the additionality, and also the environment co-benefits of the practice of carbon farming. Last but not least, applicants should document in an easy and accessible way all the newly developed solutions in order to facilitate its better uptake and transmit to all relevant actors. So in line with the nature of living labs, and also as mentioned before, proposals must implement multi-actor approach. They can, so they may provide financial support to third parties. The maximum is the same as before, 200,000 euros per third party. We expect that the project capitalizes on results and work that is already ongoing by other projects very related to this. Also interact with the EIP agri-operational groups and the EU Soil Observatory. And in this case, we really strongly recommend that the activities benefit both conventional and organic farming. So I think this is all for my presentation.
Thank you very much, Paula. And now the floor is yours for questions that you can make in Slido. We have the first question. If project includes experimental sites outside the living labs, can they be anywhere and connected as satellites to the living lab, or be separate and for project only? Paula, if you can take this question.
Sure, thank you. So, so no, the sites should be part of the living lab. So each living lab has to be composed by several sites. What you can have outside of the living lab, as it was explained in the implementation plan, are isolated sites can be seen as lighthouses when those are already sites where the activities that are undertaken are really how to say, exemplary with regards to the certain practice that they are developing, and this can be outside of the cluster, but otherwise they should be inside, connected, part of the living lab, so but it can be included. If the sites are, I don't know if the question goes to that, is focused on that, but if the site is far away, so it does not belong to the regional area where the living lab is working, it should form another living lab. And then there's another question. Should I go on?
Yes, please.
Yes. So yeah, so each living lab is really unique, I would say. We do not we cannot really give a recipe. So according to the research topic, they will face, they will address the land type, the type of actors. So we really cannot be so prescriptive, but we give, I'm sorry, we gave a guideline, as I said, of a living lab having some sites, we say between 5. So the implementation plan talked about 10 to 20 sites for living lab, but we really do not expect that in all living labs. So it depends on the topic, the land use, the actors that will be involved.
Thank you very much, Paula. And it brings me that in general, I would make the comment on all the projects. So whatever you decide to do in your application, explain why you take a different choice, a choice that you have made in your application. And so after we will be able to assess how far it's in line with the objective of the topic. So explain your choices. An additional question? Yes, Paula, if you can take it.
Yes, so I see in my screen, could you provide additional information on the description of the living labs? Yes. So there are many definitions, but to make it short and concise, the living labs will be places where people will come together to co-create, to test, to monitor, to evaluate a solution to a specific identified problem that they all have in different sites, as I said. So in the case of the soil mission, it will be soil health problems. So it will be a place where people will collaborate among themselves. So several partners and several sites focusing on a common objective. And it is very important for the living labs that this is done in real life settings. So we're not talking about a laboratory alone, or so it's really in real life settings. And we talk about living lab being placed on a regional or sub-regional level because we are focusing on functional settings. That says to say that they are really linked among themselves, that they are place-based. So that is really a local group of sites working together. So
thank you, Paula. I think it's okay. And after, if somebody would like to have additional information, we can also come back to that. It's just a question of time. I try to handle that we have time for all the topics and all on the agenda points that we have. There is another question on, can other organizations and research organizations apply? Maybe you can shortly reply to this one.
Yes, sure. Not any, but depending on the living lab, the land use, and the topic, they will address, yes, many types of organizations, stakeholders, businesses, companies, society, authorities can apply. So it's really a multi-stakeholder and multidisciplinary approach.
And maybe a last question, and after we need to move to the next topic, about why it's important that the living labs are territorially defined and confined.
Yes, so why it is important that they are territorial? Yes, a bit as I said before, because so what we are going to look in the living labs is that the practices that are developed and that are investigated can be compared between each other. So you can compare maybe a practice in different contexts, and see if why or how it works better in one place or in the other. We can have also people that are close together, as I said before, as a functional core or as a focused group on a common problem. And this can only happen if they are in a region that they share the same problems, the same type of problems on the soil, the same type of weeds problems or pests or scarcity on the nutrient, for instance. So we don't care if it is cross-border or not. The importance is that they are really, so country division is not a problem, is the location that they should be close by. Of course, it's like an example we always give. A farmer in Spain cannot maybe have the best cross-fertilization and communication and interaction, and cannot have the same interaction with a farmer in Denmark than with a farmer just next to him, where he can share the same kind of problems.
And maybe very shortly, just to take this last question, if you can come back to the slide about universities, if my colleagues just can bring back, because the reply is rather easy. Yes, it is possible, but just keep in mind, as usual, proposal need to justify such a choice. So I would like to close here the question and answer session and move to the joint topics that will be presented by my colleague Leonard Meyer. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aurelia. So to finish this round of presentation of the topics, we have two that are jointly developed with one or even two other missions. Looking at the time, and given that these have already been presented in earlier sessions of the info days, I think we can keep it relatively short. The first one is basically about water retention. That's the key concept here. So in terms of the policy context here, we're zooming in on the objectives that are relevant for the soil mission implementation plan. On the next slide, please. Thank you. So from a soil health perspective, we look at this mostly with regard to avoiding the sealing of the soil, but of course also the prevention of erosion. And then increased water retention capacity has other benefits for water and for the climate, of course, in terms of adaptation mainly. And thereby it will increase resilience to climate change impacts. I should have mentioned initially that this is an innovation action. And we are looking to fund 2 projects. So in order to achieve this innovation, there's an important emphasis on the mobilization of all relevant actors. And this is translated into the scope with, again, something that is a little bit specific, at least in the context of the soil mission, but it's how they operate in the mission Oceans and Water, where every issue is addressed in a specific sea basin. And so here the projects will focus on the Mediterranean, and they will carry out demonstration activities of not just any approach to increase water retention capacity, but socio-ecological and nature-based solutions in particular. There's a bit of an openness for hybrid solutions, but this should be the main emphasis. There are also minimum thresholds defined in terms of the numbers of demonstrations as well as countries concerned. Also, there's a requirement to focus on areas which are large enough to comprise various different systems. And again, very much in the spirit of not just the multi-actor approach that I think in the soil mission we are by now familiar with, but also maximizing the uptake of such approaches. There's an emphasis on the involvement of authorities, stakeholders, and so forth. One final specificity to mention here is the possibility to provide cascaded grants to so-called associated regions, in addition to those which participate directly in the project. So with a view already to, as it were, spreading and scaling up what is being demonstrated in the core of the project. Yeah, I think I leave it here and move directly to the next topic, which again is a joint one here between two missions, oceans and soil. And okay, I see now that I was horribly confused. And I was talking about this one already. My apologies, as I was looking at my own slides in parallel. So forget what I said about the Mediterranean with regard to water retention, because it applies to this one here. It does not apply to the other one, which does not have such a specific regional limitation. I hope that's clear, and we can clarify in the questions if not. So here, really, we are looking at the Mediterranean. And it's about nutrient pollution in a perspective that runs really from the point or the source rather of pollution, not least of course in agriculture, all the way through the water courses to the sea. So the idea is to tackle the input of excess nutrients into soils, into freshwater courses, and thereby also tackle eutrophication in the sea. And this is done in the context of, again, of course, the soil mission implementation plan, but also specific objectives that are relevant in the context of the mission on oceans and water. Again, this being an innovation action, it's all about supporting and speeding up the uptake of approaches that can help to both prevent and then eventually remediate pollution. And of course, this will have, in order to accomplish this, the use of fertilizers will have to be part of the action. Next slide, please, in terms of the scope. Again, this follows relatively naturally from the expected outcomes. And there is a similar requirement here in terms of the kind of territorial units that should be covered. And there's also a very similar expectation in terms of involving different kinds of actors. And once again, here we have the opportunity to provide cascaded grants to regions facing similar issues outside of the outside of those which are directly covered in the project. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much, Leo, for the two topics presentation. Now the floor is yours for any questions. So I think that my colleagues put on the screen a previous question, that because we are not getting questions for the two joint topics, and as we have a little time, maybe my colleague can take this this question. Is there any preferences of specific regions in Europe which might be more affected by the certification? I think it is the topic of flow.
Thank you. Yes, this one we didn't cover earlier. There's no, there isn't really any such preference, except, but I think this goes without saying, that the proposal should focus on regions which are affected or at least at risk of, affected by or at risk of decertification. Other than that, it's really up to the applicants.
We just wait some seconds before closing the Slido, because we are not having questions on the joint topics. So we have a question on the joint goals. The regional focus was highlighted. Does this imply collaboration with authorities not 3 level that will sign the future charter of the mission? I think maybe Anatek, you can take this question because it's a more general nature.
If not, or surely I can also give it a go.
Okay, go ahead.
So I assume that that Mr. Murao is referring to the soil mission, to the oceans mission charter, which is a little bit beyond our direct area of competence. So I think it would be safest to rechannel this question through the written channel, so that we can look at it also together with colleagues in charge of the mission oceans. Probably this would not be a bad idea, but I don't think it's strictly required. That would be my assumption.
Yes, thank you. Yes, no obligation. Yes, of course it is welcome, but there is no such obligation. I do not see any other questions coming in, so if you don't mind, we continue on our agenda, because we still have very interesting point and the presentation, as I have announced at the beginning, from nations. So the next point is a Slido, the consultation, as we have done at the beginning, and this time we would like to have your opinion on whether you consider that since the launch of the soil mission, awareness on soil health has raised mainly in the scientific community, or between farming community, or in the society in general. It's sufficient in the reply you put A, B, or C, and we would very much welcome if you could contribute to this poll, and it will be open for 2 minutes. Thank you. Thank you very much for all the contributions. It's very interesting, with a very strong favor for the scientific community. And at my surprise, just to tell you, the farming community is lower than the awareness raising at the level of the society in general. It's also help us to drive our communication and engagement activities and awareness raising activities around the mission, and will also give you an indication about the readiness of the problem in the society as such on soil health. So it's very interesting. In some seconds, we will close the poll. It doesn't really change. I think that the scientific community is still very much ahead. But still, the awareness raised rather importantly in the society in general. So that is encouraging, I would say. Thank you very much for the contributions. That's very interesting. And now we are coming to the last agenda point. And before giving the floor to Niels Hallberg, please let me make a very short introduction. To support the establishment of soil health living labs, the nation's projects funded under the mission in Work Programme 2023-21 call will act as a messenger of the mission to national and regional stakeholders. They mean to organize national engagement sessions and provide access to capacity building materials and information. The aim is to support discussions on the best living lab setups to address regional soil needs and foster early matchmaking for future applicants to the living lab course. So let me give the floor now to Niels Hallberg, Coordinator of Nations, here today with us to explain to you directly what the project is about. Niels, the floor is yours. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Do I go through?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, and thanks for inviting me. So, if you have listened to the presentation of the calls and you sit out there saying, well, this soil mission is really relevant to me and I would be interested in forming a living lab, and in response to the mentioned calls, but you think this is kind of daunting, where to start, etc. Well, Nations is there for you. So we're a service project, you may say, and we have planned activities, promised activities over the next coming month in support of those who want to build living labs in support of the soil mission and responding to the call. Please, the next slide. I'll give you just a very brief run through of the things, the activities we are going to offer and set up in member states and Horizon Europe associated countries over the coming months. So our main objectives is to reach out and prepare regional and national stakeholders to apply for and implement soil health living labs and facilitate the deployment of the soil deal mission across European regions. So we will have national events. We will train mentors to coach at national level. We will build capacity in living labs. And we will hold more trans-European thematic events and matchmaking events in order to help building the consortia necessary for applying to the call. Please, next. Can I have the next video? Yeah, and so just very briefly, we are a consortium that tries to spread out across Europe, with the darker brown, darker green countries being directly represented, and the other lighter colors is the countries we will also cover with national events through a collaboration. And one of the partners we have is the European Network of Living Lab, in order to really contribute with a long-term speciality, specializing in or knowledge specialized in this. Please, next. So we just, from the beginning, we have to realize that the soil mission is, of course, about the 8 objectives. I trust this is now known to all. What is important to notice is that this is supposed to be addressed at different land use types. So not only agriculture, also forestry and nature, also urban areas and post-industrial soils. So our support and engagement will try to address these different stakeholders around these different land use types. And then there will be collaborative efforts to create knowledge this is the idea of the Living Labs is to support collaborative initiatives to co-create knowledge. So just mind you, the key words here: user-centered and place-based, many different stakeholders, real-life settings, and several sites, as it was also mentioned in the run-through of the topic text. Please, the next. First and foremost, we promised to help organize national engagement events in member states and these associated countries in the coming months. And we'll try to do that, as I said, in national language, so that we can invite, or the partners responsible for these will invite broadly the relevant stakeholders in order to raise awareness on the soil health mission objectives, the value of soils, and facilitate the first move towards identifying regional soil health issues corresponding to the objectives of the soil mission, and inspire participants to then form working groups to establish living labs around these issues, and to perhaps go for an application towards the calls. Next, please. And then following that, we will try to train some mentors who could then also coach, still in national languages preferably, the groups that after these engagement sessions see that they would like to try forming a living lab, but will be facing, of course, all the constraints there might be in forming such ambitious co-creation collaboration. So please, next. So besides these activities, across that, we will offer some webinars, more specific, addressing how to set up living lab networks, the business cycles and governance models of living labs, and try to address some of the questions that for sure will arise in the application process. And these will be offered both in webinars and as recordings, primarily in English, addressing those who will have to write anyway an application in English. So please, a few more slides. Take the next, please. There'll also be some other more thematic events addressing perhaps more specific issues of the different soil use types, and perhaps some of the objectives, in order to perhaps support more specific applications. We'll see how exactly that folds out. We will also need to learn from the questions arising through the coaching sessions. Please, next. And then on top of this, we will also help you, the national regional consortia or living labs that tries to respond. They will need, as we saw from the call text, to go together with other living labs in other regions in order to form the consortia that are then eligible for applying for the calls. So we will try to set up some matchmaking events and web tools to let living labs pitch to each other and try to match up, and then form the overall consortium ready to apply for the call. Please, I think there's one more slide. Oh yeah. Across this, we will also set up a help desk, a web type help desk, where we could where we could help consortia forming with more tangible, concrete questions. That will have to be, as I write here, in collaboration with NCPs and the Horizon Europe Help Desk, in order to have the right responsibilities behind also more formal questions. So on the last slide, please. I think I have there the contact information for you. So please look at our website and get into contact through LinkedIn, for example. And if you have already ideas of who to invite for the national engagement events, or if you want to help us organize it in your country, then don't hesitate to reach out to us, to me directly or via the contacts on this slide. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And now the floor is yours. In case you would have any questions, you can raise it. We have some minutes for exchanging. For the moment, we are not getting any question. Let's wait for one more minute before closing the info session. Nils, do you see that we have a question received? Are you forming consortium for living lands in soil health call? Could you?
The nations as a project is not leading or forming any living labs or consortia. We are helping to assist those who wants to form. If the organizations behind nations in that consortium eventually becomes partners in living labs formed by others at national level, I cannot tell. But that's the main objective here, is to support those who have questions or needs assistance in forming their living lab and their application. No, the dates for the national events have not been set yet, and they will be organized together with national representatives, different institutions, and our aim is that they will be informed to a wide range of stakeholders through organizations and others that we are currently collecting and setting up. Yeah, and while not anyone can get trained to be a mentor, but we will reach out also through the NCPs, the mission NCPs, to get them to help us identify potential mentors. But of course, you need to have an interest in in mentoring others, and you need to have a fairly good understanding of the EU system and be willing to learn about at least the first steps of Living Lab formation. So there's a question here on representing a company. Well, this is a very personal opinion then, but looking at the requirements for Living Labs within the addressing the soil deal mission, advisory services would be probably in most cases very relevant as one of the stakeholders, whether they are the ones that initiate the Living Labs or they come in as partners in the regional or national Living Lab setup will depend on the context. In some countries I know it will be the farmer organizations, the farmer-led advisory services that will try to establish the Living Labs. Yeah.
I do not see any other questions coming in. Thank you very much, Niels, for the replies. I'm checking with my colleagues. No, there are no more questions coming in, so thank you very much, Niels. And now it is for me time to close the section. And first, of course, to thank all the people who have participated to this info session. I would like to thank all the speakers, the technicians, and the back office colleagues that manage Slido moderation for their help. Thank you, of course, very much for the audience and for the interest and for the very interesting questions that we have received today. As I said already during the afternoon, if you have more questions, we invite you to address them to the Research Inquiry Service. And after we receive, of course, a reply from our side. Maybe before closing the event, I would like to recall probably the most important information from today is that the call is open and you can apply until the 20th September 2023. And of course, as you know, you can apply in the EU Funding and Tenders portal online. And just to close it, I would like to wish you good luck with the preparation of the proposals. And with this, I close the session. I think it was the last info session on the mission, so I close the mission info sessions and say goodbye. Thank you.